And talking about consumers, the next generation are pretty much the biggest consumers as well, because they're the ones that are going to be the elite athletes for the future, or the elite athletes now. And how important is Grassroots to you guys in terms of what you do at the moment as a brand?
Yeah, so Grassroots is sort of, I wouldn't say a sensitive subject, but it's definitely been something that we definitely discussed a lot. For us, we're looking at it that we're not necessarily rushing to get into that space, because it's so dominated by, competing brands. But we're looking at, like, how do we want to show up in that space?
Welcome everyone to Beyond the Athlete podcast. Today we actually have a very special guest. We've been trying to get this conversation going for months, but we're finally here, and we've made it happen, which is great. So our guest today is Nigel Wright, who runs the global brand marketing side of New Balance basketball, and is currently doing some amazing things within that space. So we really want to kind of dive into his journey, as well as who he is, and what his plans are for the future, and the state of basketball as we see it now from his point of view as well. So Nigel, thank you for coming onto our podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the intro. And I know it was a lot of back and forth. As you know, like in the middle of basketball season, a lot of planning, a lot of what if scenarios, and things sort of, my schedule just got a little crazy. But happy to be here. I'm glad we found some time to chat.
Awesome. So who's your money on? I actually emailed you. Who's your money on for championship?
Oh man, tough one. I will say honestly, I think it's going to be a Celtics Nuggets championship. Who wins? I put my money on it. I don't know, man. Damn. I'll say Celtics.
Okay, cool. My money's on the Lakers.
Everyone wants to see the Lakers Celtics matchup, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't know. After last night, Denver looked pretty good, and obviously Jamal Murray's a part of the brand. So I should be rooting for Denver, but I'm also, being real. I think the Celtics is their chance. So we'll see.
Okay, good take. So my first question for you, Nigel, who are you? Who's Nigel? What was your upbringing like? What's your journey been like so far to what you're currently doing now, especially in the world of basketball and the world of sports? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, for sure. So, man, upbringing is sort of a loaded question, because I could probably take the full hour of this podcast to talk about it. But in a nutshell, Nigel Wright, kid from Harlem, New York. Man, always kind of stayed in the world of basketball. Always kind of had a passion for sneakers. Played basketball growing up. Collected sneakers, the Jordans, the Kobe, everything that everyone idolized. So I was always a part of that basketball culture. For me, my youth was kind of, I wouldn't say it was all over the place. Permanently grew up in Harlem, lived in Brooklyn for a couple of years. Ended up actually going to school out there for a little bit, but mostly just spent my time in Harlem. I guess started to branch out a little bit more. Obviously, I went to college, went to Penn State, and that was kind of like my first time living outside of the state. So getting a chance just to be in a part of a different environment for me, I grew up in such an urban environment. I kind of wanted just to see something else, something new. My brother actually was a graduate from Penn State, so went up there to visit him a few times, and I mean, I personally just love the college experience that it kind of had. I was like, this is probably where I want to be. So yeah, did a few years at Penn State, and graduated in sort of a recession at the time. I said graduated 2008, and States was in a flux. It wasn't sort of a lot of opportunities, a lot of things to kind of figure out where I wanted to sort of take my career. And for me personally, I mean, be transparent. I didn't know. I was just a kid fresh out of college. I just wanted the opportunity, whatever that may be. So I ended up taking a couple of roles on the broadcast network side, working in that industry for a few years. I guess I'll fast forward to, I guess, where things started to change for me. Ended up taking a role over at the Players Tribune. And at the time of the Players Tribune, I mean, it still is sort of a startup, but it really gave me an opportunity to kind of get my hands dirty. So in a sense, when you're working at a startup, you know, although your role may be one thing, you also got to be flexible and be able to, you know, maybe carry the gym bag sometimes for the client. So for me, that was kind of like getting my hands dirty, working day in and day out with the brand partnership team, being a part of the marketing team, helping create the plans, helping create the strategy, etc. I was having fun with it. Learned a lot. I was sort of like realizing I was at a point where like, hey, there's opportunities in the world of sports. The Players Tribune obviously being a sports platform that spoke to athletes first, or from an athlete's point of view. I got curious. I started to realize there was a lot of opportunities out in the world of basketball outside of just playing on the court. When you think about it, you know, you got the general managers, you got the team assistants, you got the training staff, you got the ticket sales group. I mean, the list goes on and on. You got people up in the actual organization, you know, they have a marketing team. They have a social team. So for me, I just kind of stayed curious. I think the light for me, I think I always go back to the Knuckleheads podcast. At the Players Tribune launch, I was sort of a part of that group. And man, amazing time. I just kind of think about where we started to kind of seeing where that podcast has gone. So worked on that project for a few years. You know, a couple opportunities came up. And you know, eventually I sort of landed at New Balance for the past 2.5 years. It's been an amazing journey. Learning a lot. Every day is really never the same. I mean, to be transparent, you know, I sort of came from a publishing digital media side of the world. But as my career just started to develop, started to make relationships and network with people, you know, those opportunities and, you know, the curiosity just kind of put me in the right situations at the right time.
And would you also say that alongside those sort of relationships, as well as the curiosity that you had, were there a lot of transferable skills from those previous spaces that you worked in or kind of established yourself in, that kind of as you've kind of taken into the role that you're doing now with New Balance?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we're in a world now where, you know, we're starting to work around 20% ideas. So, you know, and what that mean by that is like, not necessarily putting all your resources into one thing, but sort of to see what sticks, you know, get point of views from different people across the category, seeing what is relevant within the culture of basketball, making sure it's authentic to the consumer that we're looking to serve. So, you know, for us, that curiosity, I mean, it's not necessarily a skill set that you learn in school. It's just something that I've always kind of been about. And I think that's even part of my upbringing. You know, seeing things in the neighborhood, curious, like, why is that color? Or, you know, just, you know, why is this a two-door car? Or, you know, why they decide to make this wood instead of leather? Yeah, like that's always kind of been my thing. So, yeah, I think it just kind of helped me kind of stay on top of my toes, so to speak, and keeping, you know, I guess this basketball journey of mine's alive. As I said, you know, I played at one point and now having an opportunity to work in the sport, it's been a pretty cool transition for me.
Awesome. I'm quite similar as well because I came from a fashion background. So my mom and dad, both designers from Nigeria.
Nice.
So myself, my 4 younger sisters, I think just 3 of us actually dabbled into fashion. Well, 2 of them actually work in fashion, not fashion marketing and fashion styling as well. But I was more doing shopping, styling, and I really had a love for design, but I didn't have the skills. So a lot of the stuff. So I got curious in terms of like, how can that whole space be? How can that whole space be can be improved, basically? So that curiosity got me into thinking about different ways of how fabric is created, etc. And then I think from that's when basketball sort of came back to me, because I actually started playing when I was 15, when I actually came to the UK,
Nice.
from Nigeria, and started playing. I wasn't great, but I got better. But one of the in the States and here, basketball is quite different in terms of accessibility. So in the UK, you have to actually, there's a lot of places, especially when you're younger, you actually have to pay for it. So for example, for example, like a space could be about maybe £50 an hour, £50 an hour, £60 an hour, some places £105 an hour.
Wow.
So imagine a 17, 18, 16-year-old who's trying to really improve their game, and it's October, November, December, when it's cold outside. What do they do now? They can't really get better. So you can see how the rest of the world is so much ahead of us because of that accessibility. So so that curiosity came into like, okay, what can we do in terms of help making this happen? So we started actually putting our money into it and actually booking the courts every week for these young guys to actually come and play and improve. And then it became what it is now with this podcast, with a lot of stuff that we're actually doing. We actually speak to quite a few people. We actually speak to New Balance UK at the moment as well. But I'll tell you a bit about that in terms of what we're doing with you guys.
Okay, so cool. Yeah, I would love to know.
Yeah, but that curiosity came from just wanting to innovate and just wanting to improve things as well. And when you're someone that creates, that curiosity comes into place because you're always trying to change things. You're always trying to tweak things as well.
Yeah.
So leading up to the next question for me is, when you actually look at, from your standpoint, working for a global brand, which is involved in sports, what is it that you guys are currently looking at yourself as well that can actually be improved or made better, specifically maybe in the world of basketball as well, because it's not just a US sport, it's more of a global sport now also.
Yeah, so good question. I mean, for us, basketball for New Balance is still sort of a growing stage. We had sort of a presence in the 80s. You know, we kind of took a step back and we reemerged in 2019. And thankfully, you know, Kawhi was in that year, or that amazing run with the Toronto Raptors, and sort of helped take us from getting back into basketball to like, hey, these guys are real players in the game of basketball. So it's been a very steady grind, I must say. I mean, there's still a lot to learn. When you think of New Balance, to be transparent, you know, it's sort of a running brand first, or if anything, an athleisure brand. So basketball with the market itself, you know, the other brands in the world, you know, we're just looking to carve out our own lane. For us, it's not really trying to do what everyone else is doing, but just being disruptive in our own way. I mean, there's numerous projects I could probably talk about that, you know, from basketball itself that was sort of disruptive, but also from a brand that was disruptive. That, you know, we're just looking for our own sort of lane in this industry. I mean, there's tons of brands that's activated in the space, and we just want to be smart and strategic about how we show up.
Okay, that's cool. And how do you think sort of digital marketing as well as traditional marketing can play a big part in that as well?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Digital marketing is obviously where everyone sees right now. I mean, social media itself, you know, the algorithms of Twitter, the Instagram of the world, Facebook, etc. And then from a digital standpoint, where consumers are getting their content, how consumers are shopping. You know, there's quite frankly a sort of a system. People actually gearing up to go to the store Saturday morning, where it's like, hey, I just get what I need from home, and you know, it can arrive later today or next week, kind of thing. So it's sort of like showing up where the consumers are, But
Yeah.
from my lens, I think it's also creating a consumer journey in a sense that you want to be respect you want to be respectful to the time that you spend with the consumer, and you want to
Yeah.
show up in moments that matter to them. So
Mm.
for us, it's sort of kind of creating that ecosystem of like, hey, when a consumer comes into our retail store, this is the experience that they're getting. When they
Yeah.
try our products, this is the experience that they're getting. When they
Mhm.
see our peers, consuming this product, that's the emotional connection that we're looking to bring in as we feel it. So, we always think of consumer first. I mean, basketball itself is constantly growing, it's changing for us.
Mm.
We have a lot of cool things in the works, but um, it's definitely been a fun ride and just in
Yeah.
taking things one day at a time.
Okay. And talking about consumers, the next generation are pretty much the biggest consumers as well, because they're the ones that are going to be the elite athletes for the future, or the elite athletes now.
Yep.
And how important is Grassroots to you guys in terms of what you do at the moment as a brand?
Yeah, so grassroots is sort of I wouldn't say a sensitive subject, but it's definitely been something that we definitely discussed a lot.
Mm.
For us, we're looking at it that we're not necessarily rushing to get into that space because
Mhm.
it's so dominated by competing brands. But we're looking at like how do we want to show up in that space. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty easy to say like, hey, we could grab a couple of teams, sponsor them, and put them in tournaments. I don't know if that is really the value that we looking to
Yeah.
add. So for us, it's just coming up with the right strategy.
Yeah.
Aligning with the right sort of goal. I mean, what are we looking to get out of this? Is it exposure? Obviously, that Gen Z audience, or what we would like to call our global independent, that 18-year-old kid, we need to figure out ways how to show up there. It's
Mm.
just a matter of being more strategic versus doing what others have already
Yes.
done.
Okay.
So
And it's
I, I was gonna say, I think you may not see anything in the immediate future, but it's definitely a part of our long-term strategy for sure.
okay. And I like that, because I feel like that's really needed a lot more now, especially from quite a few brands and also community groups as well. So even with ourselves as well, as much as we do the gospel runs, which is great, it brings value
Yeah,
to the young guys and young ladies. But then what next? If not saying that not everyone can make it to pro level, and that's
right.
something we're honest about. But at the same time, we still tell them you still have to put in the work to even get there anyway. So but alongside that, we also try to introduce them to other things as well within the sport. So one of the reasons why we actually started this podcast is to expose them to people like yourself, who are also athletes, but doing amazing things on the other side of just playing sport as well. And one of the things that we've been looking at is things like coaching,
Okay.
as part of it as well. So it's also them seeing what we're doing within the community and also maybe replicating it. So taking that template and replicating it as well. So things like coaching, things like even being a sports agent as well.
Yeah.
So that's something myself I've been looking at and introducing to the guys, that whoever wants to do that can come along with me and we can all do it together. So in saying that as well, it leads up to my next question around mentorship. Your journey from working in publishing to working within a sports brand now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that you didn't do it yourself, going from and I'm sure you had some sort of guidance, maybe a mentor that you could speak to when certain things were going on, whether it's personal or career-wise, just to give you that guidance, basically, someone that's gone through the same stages that you had to go through as well. And if you have, what was that like, the experience for it? How important is it as well?
You know what? No one never asked me that question. And to be completely honest, I didn't really have a mentor.
Oh wow, okay.
Which is interesting now that I sort of reflect on it. So as I think about my journey, I think what sort of got me to where I am today was aligning myself with the right relationships.
Right, got
And
you.
I mean, understanding, where relationship A could help me put myself in a position for
Mm,
relationship B, relationship C, etc.
yeah.
So I don't know, my growth into the industry was interesting. I mean, funny story. When I helped launch the Knuckleheads podcast, Hennessy was one of our brand partners at the time
Okay.
for that podcast. The brand
Mm,
director and I just sort of had a crazy cool relationship. I mean, and when we had a chance to actually meet in person, we just hit it off. So we sort of stayed in touch. A
yeah.
few months later, he left Hennessy to take another opportunity and reached out to me and was like, "Hey, would this be something that you would be interested in?" To
Mm,
be honest, I wasn't really sure because I felt like what I was building at the Players Tribune was really special, but I also it was really hard to turn down what the offer was.
yeah.
Essentially, it was a consulting role for New Balance basketball. So prior to me joining the brand, I was sort of consulting for them, and giving ideas and helping sort of create what you have seen around the front guy and Kawhi. So helping put a lot of that strategy together. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, it really sort of again opened those doors for me where doing that work when the opportunity came up on the brand side, it was I wouldn't necessarily say it was a no brainer, but the relationship was already there.
Yeah.
It was just more like, hey, you're interested, we're interested. What are the next things that we need to do to take us to the next step? So, um, not to say that mentorship isn't important, but I think for me, I kind of looked in the industry and pick different things from different people, the Mav Carters of the world, the Steve Stouts of the world, different
Mm,
CMOs for different brands, be listening to
mm,
different podcasts. Um, I just kind of took bits and pieces of every single thing
yeah.
and
Yeah.
and and molded it into what worked for me.
No, that's still powerful as well because for myself, I've always had a mentor through my journey as well. When I didn't have that, I was super lost. By the way, I didn't know what what to do with my life at all. But that mentorship has actually kept me in the right path over time. However, also like what you said, listening to some people, especially like top CMOs as well, that's very, very important because it's all about also educating yourself as well. Because
Yep.
those guys have actually gone through a journey, but they might not be able to directly speak to you or mentor you, but there's a platform available where you can actually hear them speak and take a lot of nuggets from that as well, which is pretty much amazing. And this is something that I speak to a lot of the guys about as well. And especially during our sessions, we always have like a 10-minute huddle talk, basically, where I pretty much take what I've learned and really give that to them to apply to not just basketball, but also their daily lives as well.
Yep.
And a lot of it's actually impacted a lot of them. And I'm hoping that it takes them to the certain levels that they want to go to as well. And that's something that for me is the most valuable thing ever, basically.
Yeah. I agree.
So my next question would be around just basketball itself. I know a lot of my questions are pretty much based around basketball.
Oh no, that's all good because that's what I work in. So we could do this all day.
But in terms of playing or being connected to players, what is that difference between players that enables them to even get some sort of recognition or partnership with a brand like New Balance? So we're looking at guys like um, Jamal Murray. We're looking at guys like Kawhi. What is it that difference that you guys see in those guys compared to everyone else that really applies to a brand like New Balance as well. And the reason why I asked that is because a lot of the young guys, especially in the UK, like I said, they're not exposed to a lot of these things. So I want to be able to bring this to them so that they can see beyond just playing the sport, that there's so much things around it as well that they can also get involved in and they can also be a part of.
Yeah, no, that's another great question. To be honest, I wouldn't necessarily say there's like a checkbook of a criteria list, like these guys need to check all these boxes in order to be a part of the brand.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, what you notice with a lot of the athletes that we do have on our roster are sort of fearlessly independent. They kind of walk to their own beat. They kind of react whenever they feel like reacting.
Yeah.
You know, you look at a guy like Kawhi, who sort of I mean, I always jokingly say this, he's the biggest unknown superstar. Doesn't have social media. Don't really hear about a lot of him in the media, any controversies. Doesn't, you know, he's a pretty just kind of cool guy. I mean, to be honest, and like if you get a chance to sit with him and talk to him, he's normal just like anyone else. But he's super locked in into being one of the best players to ever play the game. You bring in a guy like Jamal Murray, another guy. I mean, first of all, he's super cool guy off the court. I mean, probably one of the favorite athletes I've ever been around. But he's family first, community focused, community driven, and sort of another guy that fits that global independent of being fearlessly independent. I wouldn't say he's the superstar of the point guards, but he kind of, hey, you're not sleeping on Jamal Murray. He's giving you 25, 30 any given night, coming off 31 points last night against the Lakers. So it's like he's another one of those guys who kind of fits what we're looking to do as far as the category. And, you know, global recognition. I mean, he's from Canada. I mean, that in itself, you know, kind of gives us another sort of avenue to market against. We speak about a guy like Zach LaVine. He's into sign language, and you know he has a global recognition, big presence in China due to the fact that he's a former two-time slam dunk champion. So you know there's different things about each individual athlete that makes sense for the brand. And I think the biggest thing for us is that they're all good individuals. They're family first, and you know they're all community focused, which sort of ladders back up to our core values as a brand overall.
Okay. And when you speak about community, how important is that to yourself personally as well as New Balance? And in regards to like now the global community, what are you doing to sort of impact that? We're not talking about mainstream sort of clientele. We're talking about communities that aren't just basketball but sports related as well. I know you can speak mainly on the basketball side, but I don't know if you have more broad on info on what you do sports wise also.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to basketball, and I think for us to sort of understanding what some of our athlete passion points are. When we talk about a guy like Kawhi, obviously giving back to the community, as everyone say, you know, is a big thing for everyone that they make it. But for him, that was a big part of him coming apart on New Balance, was for us being able to curate those community moments for him. Not to say that he was just signed with another brand. Who knows what that situation would be? But because New Balance is a family brand, community is always at the heart of everything we do. So for him to want to be doing that and give back to, you know, the underprivileged of his neighborhood, like that's exactly what we stand for. We did a court refurbishment, did a whole sort of takeover, so to speak, for the weekend for the kids that he grew up with in his older neighborhood. So community is definitely a big part of what New Balance represents.
Amazing. And do you have any, are you working on any sort of near future plans in regards to basketball globally as well?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of things that we're still looking to grow. I mean, to be transparent, you know, the focus has been around the NBA. But also understanding the NBA is a global game. So showing up in a moment where the NBA are sort of activated. Example where, you know, Zach LaVine played in Paris during the NBA season with the Detroit Pistons.
I'm so that game.
Yeah.
I'm so that game.
Yeah, that game was amazing. But you know, leveraging our global partners. You know, the NBA is one of our partners, so you know, partnering with them and sort of understanding what our opportunities are. Foot Locker is another partner of ours, where you know we actually reached out to our EMEA team over there in Paris to help put together sort of a store takeover. Where Zach debuted a new model for us during the season, which was the Fresh Foam BB. So that was a pretty cool, I would say, test and learn for us as we're still sort of growing in that global space. But we're sort of taking these opportunities and these activations and figuring out how to fine tune it and get better. Knock on wood, you know, NBA is also activated in Paris this upcoming summer, where you know one of our guys could potentially be coming off a championship. So and Jamal Murray, where he'll be there, and you know, just kind of being prepared because those are opportunities that we want to be a part of, especially when we're trying to grow the category of basketball. Understanding that you know our market share may not be as big as these other competing brands.
Amazing. That's really good to know. And I just wanted to. I really like the fact that you guys are really working on that side of community a lot, and especially in terms of what you have plans for the future. The game in Paris, I think, was quite powerful with the athletes that you had there as well. New Balance is such a, for me personally, I love the brand. I've not worn anything or in regards to basketball, but more lifestyle. And I've always been a fan as well, to the point that when I actually put some of your sneakers on, people are like, what's that? Like, where'd you get that from? So for me, it starts a conversation, which is great. So that's what I like with products. If it starts a conversation, it means that whether it is good, bad, liked or not liked, it starts a conversation that you can actually be able to express to someone else, and really sell that product to them as well, which I love. So, and it enables me to have conversations with people I've never met before, which is great. So I'm really happy about that, and I'm looking forward to the future in terms of what's to come with the brand, especially on the basketball side as well. And my next question would be, do you have a question for me or any questions for me?
Yeah, I would love to know a little bit more about, you know, the organization that you put together, you know, how you came about, you know, how did you find just to be a part of this conversation?
Okay, so going back to that curiosity side, I'm the kind of person that would go online and really, if I set my mind on doing something like this podcast, I will go online and literally find every single person that I need to speak to. And I don't take no for an answer. So even if you say no, I'll still find a way to get you on board. For example, myself, I could have, and someone else could have easily given up and not replied back or kept in touch with you to have this conversation. But I just said for myself, no, that this is definitely going to happen because I feel like it will be such a valuable conversation to have. Even though it's a first conversation, and I'm sure we'll have many more in the future as well on the podcast and maybe outside of that as well. But the way we started was myself, and I met a 17-year-old kid who plays basketball in London, and he basically said, "Oh, you're an old man." I'm 35, by the way. So, but he's saying I'm an old man. Yeah, exactly. So that you can't play against me. So I say, okay, bring your team, I'll bring my team, and we play against each other. So I booked a court, and we ended up having 25 people there. It was meant to be just 10 of us, but we ended up having 25 people there. I think there was 5 of us who were like 3 of us over the age of 30, and everyone was from like 25 and younger, to the youngest being about 40. And we were like, wow, like this is actually quite valuable. Like these guys don't have to pay anything for it. I booked 3 hours, which is quite a long time compared to what most people normally book in the UK is maybe like an hour, 2 hours, and they charge you maybe like £5, £10. For 17, 18-year-old kids, you're not paying £5, £10 to play for an hour, because sometimes if you lose, they'll put you on not such a great team. If you lose, you're not playing for a while.
You're not playing again, yeah.
Exactly. So we decided to create that system where they can come in every Saturday, play for 3 hours straight, and each game we set it out in a structure of like a season to play off. So not winner stays on for like 3 games, etc. So everyone gets to play as a lot of times. And then that structure just became crazy. So we started having 70, 80 guys coming in, like to a point where we had 101 during Christmas that came in, and we're all playing on one court. So it's not like we have multiple courts. So so we've tried to streamline that.
In between.
Exactly, yeah. So we've really kind of like refined it over time and brought more value to the guys. So right now we're currently engaged with about 850 young people, but in our core group in our group chat we're like 240 at the moment, and these are guys between the ages of, you're talking about 13 to the age of maybe like 25, 26. And a lot of them just want to play basketball. A lot of them want to go professional. Like we have a 13-year-old kid, his brother is one of my best friends, and he's 6'8". So at 13 years old. So
6'7", but he says he's 6'8".
Exactly. So we're trying to develop him as well. So right now, what we're commonly doing is really bringing more value to them. So using this podcast as a space, using our platform to enable them to also speak as well about their journeys, about what they would like to do. Also partnering with different organizations to create job opportunities for some of them who just love to play basketball, but also need help on that side. And also guys who maybe have had issues with the criminal justice system as well, being able to find a way to inform them as well with some of our partnerships. And it's such a broad thing that we're doing at the moment. We still don't know what this is going to become, but I have a vision. I have a vision in my mind, which I can tell you on a private side.
I got you.
Yeah, but we're coming to take over the world, basically, of basketball. That's the plan.
I love that. And I love that.
Yeah, so that's pretty much in a nutshell what we do. And we're actually going to obviously design our own sort of merch as well as continue to try and work with brands like yourself and a few other brands in regards to a partnership to kind of build the visibility and the platform to do more work, not just in the UK, but also globally also.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing story to hear. Kind of how like this 17-year-old kid inspired you. And like, it's interesting. I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. You never know what type of impact you'll have when you come across someone. So
100%.
I mean, he obviously left a good impression on you, and sort of had you curious to create something amazing. So kudos to you. That's pretty cool story to hear.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you. And my final question, which I ask, well, 2 final questions, which I ask everyone.
Okay.
Next one is start, bench, trade. LeBron,
Okay.
Kobe, Michael Jordan.
Oh man, that's tough. Most people are not gonna like this answer. Partially, it's probably because of my age. Starting Jordan, benching Kobe, gotta trade LeBron, man. And I mean, I get it. All-time leading scorer, got the accolades. I get it. But I grew up on Mike dominating. I grew up watching Mike put fear in people's hearts, like really, like controlling the game. Not to say that LeBron doesn't do that either, but there's just something about Mike. Like, I said it, like Mike, man, it's tough. And then Kobe for me, I mean, I was a Team X fan, so I kind of had a little rivalry thing with Kobe, but like his work ethic was unmatched. Like, it was truly inspiring for me. Like even off the court, like wanting to always just be the best at what you do, putting your effort into everything, staying focused, being good to people. I mean, Kobe was a beast on court, but you see how the impression he left people off the court. I mean, everyone respected him, and I mean, it was just such a tragic thing when that happened.
Yeah.
Still think about the day. Like I remember I literally just finished working on something. Thank God I just finished because when the news broke, I was in shock. Like I couldn't do nothing else for the rest of the day. But yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, there's no wrong answer in that scenario.
Yeah, I remember when that happened as well. I'll be honest with you, I was in tears, man. I was
Yeah,
in
it's tough,
tears. I was so
man.
sad. Yeah. I
Yeah.
ended up jumping on 2K and literally scored every single point with Kobe Bryant on 2K.
Kobe. Yeah, I mean, Kobe has some amazing memories. I mean, his last game of his career where he had 60 points, that was on my
Yeah,
birthday.
yeah. Oh,
So
damn.
like for me, I'm always gonna remember that. Like as
Yeah,
long as
yeah,
I
yeah.
live.
Yeah.
Like I mean, yeah, he created memories for all of us. So rest in peace to the mama, man.
Yeah, man. I had a conversation with Matt from Ballers Life, and
Okay.
I think he said he would also trade LeBron, but his point was actually quite good. He said that he can get some great pieces to surround Kobe and Michael Jordan once he trades LeBron, which
Absolutely.
is so
Yeah.
yeah. So that was good. That was good. And then my final question for you is, who would you recommend to have this conversation with me on the podcast?
That's a good one. Oh man, so many people. Let's chat. I got a couple of names I want to throw your way. Let's chat.
Okay.
There's a lot of people in the industry that like. I mean, we obviously know the people that's at the top, but a lot of people on the creative side, behind the scenes, who do some pretty great productions, photography,
Yeah.
even real time game photography. I
Okay.
have a guy that I work with. Actually, Mike, my guy Mike Odell. He's in LA. He does photography now. He's a freelancer. He's been working
Hmm.
with Slam the past few, I want to say throughout the playoffs actually.
Oh, dope,
And
dope.
I really watch Mike. You might see him on Instagram. I'm giving you a shout out, Mike. Be like Mike. It's crazy how like we kind of got close to each other. We got cool, but like watching his growth of like
Yeah.
kind of staying a little local LA photographer to like really kind of really elevating the brand to seeing him travel for different games, getting the opportunity to shoot photography for Slam. So I would say Mike. I
Oh,
think
that's dope.
I think people forget how important photography is, and I'm sure he could give you an amazing perspective about it.
Amazing. Thank you. And I've been speaking to Dennis Page as well, so I need to release.
Okay.
I release some of the episodes. He's actually going to be coming on this summer, hopefully. So fingers crossed. That'll be a great conversation. So yeah, thank you very much. Really great conversation. I'm hoping that we carry on this conversation on the private side as well, like you said, and keep in touch. And yeah, appreciate it, and thank you for taking your time to speak to us on the Beyond the Athlete podcast.
Yeah, appreciate the time. I mean, one thing I believe is patience. You definitely had it. A lot of people don't understand. My days get busy sometimes, man.
Yeah.
I mean, working on the brand side, I would say like you wear so many different hats, and like
Yeah.
it just I'm so sucked into it. I live and breathe it.
Yeah.
But patience, and I appreciate you for having that with me. So thank you for having me. Definitely love to be in touch.